Monsters on the Bus is a metaphor used in ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, to help people recognize when they're not being intentional, when they're not driving their own bus. It's one of my absolute favorite tools for helping people get back in charge of themselves. So imagine that you're a bus driver. You have your set route, you've been driving it for years, you know it very well. Your route only involves right turns. One day, a group of monsters comes onto your bus with all the regular passengers. These monsters sit in the back of the bus, and they're causing a ruckus. They're yelling and they're waving chains and knives around and being generally scary and threatening. But because they're at the back of the bus, you can't hear them very well. You're not really worried. As you continue driving your route, the monsters start moving up the bus, closer and closer to you. And as they get closer, you can hear what they're yelling. They're yelling at you to turn left. They're threatening you with bad things if you don't start turning left. So you start to feel more scared as they get closer and closer, louder and louder, waving around their chains and their knives. So you start turning left. And pretty soon, you're completely off your route. You're not where you want to be, but you're trying to avoid getting hurt by these monsters. Now they're right behind you, but they're actually getting quieter because you're doing what they want. You're turning left all the time. At some point, you realize that as loud and scary as the monsters have been, they aren't actually doing anything. They're not hurting anybody. They're all bark and no bite. So then you realize that you have a decision to make. You can start turning right and doing what serves you best and risk them being scary but not actually hurting you, or you can keep turning left so they stay quiet, but you'll be nowhere near where you want to be. So you make your decision and you start turning right. As expected, the monsters start yelling and waving their knives around again, but you learn that you don't have to focus on what they're doing. You can focus on where you want to be going and how it feels to be on the path that serves and supports you. That keeps you on the path, and that keeps your life feeling supportive and fulfilling. For me, my monsters are usually anxiety or shame. My anxiety gets really loud, for example, when I'm being vulnerable. I worry that the other person is going to judge me or think less of me. There's also some shame in there, actually, so this one is a twofer. If I'm not paying attention, I might not be vulnerable with a friend or with you because I'm afraid of what you're going to think of me. Because I value being vulnerable, not being vulnerable is the equivalent of turning left all the time. I'm off track. I'm not doing what serves me. So I have to remind myself that the anxiety and the shame is not going to hurt me. Not doing what serves me, that's what hurts me. It robs me of a juicy life. For the first 25 years or so of my life, I let my monsters dictate the choices that I made and the way I lived my life. And it felt pretty empty and bland. Once I stopped listening to my monsters and I started listening to myself, life got a lot better. So I want you to identify your monsters and notice when they're being loud, and then remind yourself that they're all bark and no bite, even though they feel really scary. Then you can choose to do what serves you best.